Hi everyone, let's talk about running unit tests in the ACE Toolkit. More specifically, unit tests for flows that need a bit of a custom setup, like policies, user-defined nodes, shared classes, stuff like that. So I'll be running the tests in the ACE Toolkit version 12.0.12.5, but you can use any of the latest released toolkits that you want. So let's show you my setup. I've got a PGP policy project and I've got a unit test demo, which is basically a simple flow that uses a subflow, and in the subflow you see my PGP encryption. Now I am using the PGP node because I know that node rather well, and because it's a user-defined node that uses both policies and runtime shared classes. So let's start by showing you that this flow actually works, and that all starts with creating an integration server. So let's give it an appropriate name, finish, while we wait for it to start. So my basic flow is just HTTP input, HTTP reply, so just send any message through. It goes into the test sub, and the test sub will then encrypt the message, send the encrypted message back out, and in case anything should go wrong, it gives me an error message. Alright, so the integration server has now been created. So let's deploy my artifacts. So let's first begin with the policies, then the application, there we go. And then one more thing, I mentioned shared classes, so I also need to put the shared classes, well, one jar file actually, into the runtime of the test server. So let's just copy these into the runtime of my test server and restart my integration server so that it can pick up the new shared classes jar file. So while we wait for it to stop and start, I'll be using the flow exerciser to actually send a message through the flow, so you can see that my flow is working, and that also gives us a good input to create our test case from. So let's do that. Since the integration server has been restarted, I just deployed, so I don't need to redeploy. I've got a message here, doesn't really matter what message, seeing as I don't do anything with the contents of it, except encrypt, of course. So sending a message through, and I received a reply. And as you can see, it's a successful reply and it's an encrypted PGP message. So the flow works. Alright, now I have my recorded data here, and I can create a test case. So I will want to check everything from the message that goes through. Other than that, the defaults are fine for my demo. Right, so this is now my test case. So we've just created a test case from a work example. So just to verify, let's run this test project. And it fails. As you can see from the error here on the left, it says that it's missing policies, which is actually correct. Even though I created a standalone integration server that works, the test feature in the toolkit will create a new integration server, an empty integration server to run your tests in, which you can see from the console outputs right here. So this new and clean integration server doesn't have my runtime setup, it doesn't have my policies, and doesn't have my shared classes. So how do we get around this? Well, it's pretty simple actually. Just like you can define the working directory that you would use from command line, you can change your run configurations for the toolkit as well. If you just go to the test you are running, you can say that you want to use an existing work directory. So this is the one I've set up right now, and I know this works because we've used the flow exercise to send the message through. So okay, apply those changes, and let's run the test again. You see it takes a bit longer now to complete, and that's okay because I'm expecting it to fail anyway. There we go, it failed, and it says the process cannot exit the file because it's being used by another process. Now, the toolkit needs a stopped integration server because it needs to prepare the environment a little bit, and seeing as mine was still running, this doesn't work. So let's stop it. it stopped, so let's run the test again. Now you can see it's actually initializing my version, and the test failed. Now, this is as expected. Now, the good thing is you can see here that it's using my test server, and you can see the resources, including policies, that are being reloaded. Now, the issue here is actually an assertion issue. So by this time we know everything is running. The message went through my PGP node, but the outcome was not what the test expected to be. And if you remember my demo message flow, I can show you here. I actually had a blob in here with the PGP encrypted message. And each time I create that PGP encrypted message, it's a bit different. So the test case can't compare the two blobs because they are simply different. Alright. Now let's change that one as well. So if you're not familiar with it, search around for any of the other blocks I created. One of my last blocks was how to ignore part of a message tree or part of your message in test cases, and we'll apply that here as well. So I'm in equals message, that one failed. You can see on the left why it failed. It tells you the expected value here as well. So let's just ignore the field. Ignore path. So I want it to ignore the blob without subpaths, because there are no subplots. Save this one. Everything else will still be compared as is, and run the test again. Ah, success. Sweet, isn't it? Alright, so small recap. Running tests with custom setup in the toolkit is as easily as configuring your run configurations for that test, with the small caveat that you can either define it for your test project, which is my test here, or my specific test. So if you do this setup for each test separately, you will need to do it for each new test case you create. It's easier to just set it on the test project and then run the full project each time. And then the second takeaway is how to ignore parts of a message in a unit test if you don't want to compare those, or if they contain like timestamps or stuff like that. Alright, so I hope this helps you guys with running some toolkit tests, or it at least makes you interested and want to give it a try. So thanks for watching.